the thing is, I came up with a theory a long time ago that it's okay to be racist if your food is good. All right, because we know Italy has a few problems with its how it accepts black people. The footballers get booed and stuff. Did you know back in the day when Michelle Obama got elected, right? One of the national newspapers in Italy, right, depicted the Obamas as monkeys, but the food.
Bring it up! Bring in some cheering and welcome to the stage, Athena Kugblenu! All right. Hey, thank you very much for coming on in the room, Athena. How you doing?
And I'm in the room.
You're in the room.
Yeah.
We never do it outside.
No.
We never go outside.
You'd have to change your name.
Yeah, out the room.
Yeah.
Outside the room. Kind of just sounds dodgy, doesn't it? It'd just be outside the room. So how did you find the gig? So the first thing that I know about the gig is you almost fell over right at the beginning.
Happens when you put your feet on my stage. I just stepped to your foot. You okay, love? That was your little toe I got. Was that all right? All right, cool. So I stepped on someone's foot, right? So I do this thing. I've noticed people getting too relaxed at gigs, right? Because they put their feet on the stage. So normally I get onto the stage and I'll ask them a question about their credentials as a comedian, and when they don't have any, I'll be like, "So why are you on the stage?" Like, you wouldn't go to Cats and just be like, "Oh, put your feet on the stage," you Starlight Express, you get killed, right? But obviously, this is like it's a cozy, intimate gig, but I've got big feet. It's the podcast. I've got big feet for a girl, for a lady. So I mashed up some poor girl's foot, but I think that was on her. The comedians are coming through.
The thing about Angel is that because it's a small room, which is part of the appeal, and everybody's quite close together. It's like, and the route to the stage is tough. Is there's not much space anyway. So, and when other people are pincering their legs, I think there was a girl. Was it girl? But often there are guys man-spreading on both sides, and then you literally doing the hurdle of knees.
I've been, like a lot of London comics, I've done this gig a lot. Never mashed up someone's foot before, and never tripped up on stage. So
but that was a save.
I did it so other people didn't have to. Now the gods have been satisfied. You'll go. It's like an eclipse. You'll go 10 more years without someone doing that. Yeah,
the physical comedy gods. But how was that moment for you? So like, I'm always like, when I get on stage, a thing that I always find is like I quite like an immediate distraction or something that happens.
Yes, love it. Yeah.
But how is it for you when just that kind of moment? Like,
no, I like it. The only thing I don't like, I'm quite clumsy. I'm not Frank Spencer, but sometimes I don't. So I don't park the comedy. I don't like being clumsy. Do you know what I mean? I don't like getting my foot stuck in things and knocking into people. Yeah. So that part of me is like, I didn't like that moment. Like, but as a performer, as you said, like anything random, anything unexpected is like, it's for me, it actually is really good for a room because audiences love it. We hate it because we have things we want to say. So as a human, hate it, but as a comedian, I'm like, oh, thank God I fucking clarted her foot. So that's something, thank God that happened. That I might start doing it on purpose.
Well, I noticed that, and then the other thing was, I don't know, like stylistically, you mentioned a couple of things that happened in the room. Is that something? So, like you mentioned, I think it was either Joe that you spoke to, that I spoke to, or there was somebody else. I think. Was it the French guy or somebody?
So I'm really bad at doing what I plan to do when something fun happens. Because I'm like, there's a fucking Italian there, and Italians are racist. Yeah. And I used to do the little bit you saw is part of a much bigger bit I used to do about racism and like, your racism really has to match your cuisine. You don't have the right to be racist if your food is shit. Well, where's Joe? Joe, you're in luck. I can't stand Italians. I'm joking. It's all right. The thing is, I came up with a theory a long time ago that it's okay to be racist if your food is good. All right, because we know Italy has a few problems with its how it accepts black people. The footballers get booed and stuff. Did you know back in the day when Michelle Obama got elected, right? One of the national newspapers in Italy, right, depicted the Obamas as monkeys, but the food. Fucking hell, so the food. And I'm half Indian. Anyone know that Indians tend to have a problem with people who aren't Indian, specifically black people? It's a big deal, okay? Gandhi himself had anti-African sentiments. He's recorded, yeah? Indians have a problem with racism and colorism, too. You know what colorism is? Colorism is when you favour skin that is lighter if you're brown. If you don't understand colorism off of that description, what you've got to do is watch a Bollywood movie. Right? You will think it is set in Copenhagen. Indians, man, racist, colourist. But the food. Britain. Ready for Brexit? And what's our national dish? Bread sauce. A sauce that is made out of breads. No mountains, no chocolate, no vermouth. Yeah, it's coincidentally the people who had cooked the best food in the world tend to be quite racist. Yeah. So I had this whole bit in my head.
It's a great bit, especially where it goes.
Thank you. But what I do, which I don't hate that I do it, but I was like, I've got to say this to Alessandro, man. He needs to hear this. Yeah. The room needs to hear this. It's almost like my brain has this, and this is happening. So I want to say it, and then I'm like, oh shit, but I've only got 10 minutes. But I really, it's not a big deal, but I very rarely do what I've planned when I do stand up.
That's interesting. I mean, I find it's funny, like I recently was diagnosed with ADHD, but I mean, I don't go in my head thinking, oh, I'm ADHD that much, because I come from a generation where it was only kids that had it, and it was like part of me is gaslit by the way that I've been brought up. But I think one of what I ascribe to as an ADHD trait is I find it really hard to stay on topic. So if I go on stage with a thing that I want to talk about, if anything else happens, I will veer off to that side, to the point where if I actually really want to say something, I find it tough to go. And like, how are you on that register?
Well, so here's the thing, like, there's lots of ways to think about this. I would put it as I'm just yes and in the moment. Like for people who aren't arseholes, it's an improvisation thing, right? So I'm just going, this happened, and guess what?
Of being live in the room, like the joy of being on stage and something happening.
But let's be real, I think that's why people with ADHD are probably drawn to comedies, because that ability / need to change the subject serves you quite well as a MC, as a stand-up. So but I also think it's like forbidden fruit. Like, it's too tempting. I want to say this out loud. Like, I really wanted to say to Joe, and I did, like, for example, like, people who weren't there. There was a guy called Joe who was clearly a Brexiteer, right? And I thought it'd be really fun if I come on stage and say, "Don't worry, Joe, I fucking hate Italians." That's just like, when you just know that's gonna land. So half of it is it's gonna land. Half of it is like it's you just feel like it's a yes and moment, and half of it is like, fuck it, like, why not? Like, we only live once.
And there's also the fact that if it's live in the room, there's something kind of like it feels appropriate. So you're already you're with them, so you're on the same page as them.
I love it. I love seeing what other people have seen, or what they might not have seen. Yeah. So when I first started in stand-up, one of my things was to just be like, what is in this room? Yeah. And it'd always be a fucking weird chandelier or weird curtains or weird. I did a show last Christmas, and it was the most bizarre carpet I've ever seen. I got about 15 minutes out of this goddamn, but it's not. It's just like, this is hilarious, guys. We need to talk about this carpet. Yeah. And I think that it's really. I think when you're confident doing it, it's improvising. It's improvising, right? And I really like. Excuse me. So going back to tonight, that was what that was. It was like, this has happened. There's stuff in my head that is relevant to it. Fuck it, I'm just going to say it. And also, you get a bit bored of your material, right? I've done a few gigs recently, and I'm like, well, I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks, so let me keep it fresh.
So there's that, keeping it fresh as well, of like getting bored of kind of the thing that you've planned or done a couple of times, just like, let's mix it up. And like, do you find in your wider career as well, there's that element? So like, because you do quite a lot of things. Like, you're just telling me you just wrote a book. Yeah. Like, and like, I know you do a lot of work you do radio work as well. Yeah. What's your portfolio of stuff that you do?
I work a lot in scripted, so I do scripts now. I work in children's telly. I do obviously stand up And this is gonna sound terrible. So it's my second book that's coming out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. Like,
and that came from. I was just trying to write another book, right? And no one wanted it, even though this is great, Athena. But then they found out, these publishers found out I'd written for Horrible Histories. Yeah, which is like quite.
It's a prestigious. It's one of the top kind of TV shows.
People think it's because of that. If you write sketch, you're writing Horrible History. There's no other sketch show on telly. So some of it, a lot of it is it's prestigious, but actually it's like if you want a sketch writer who has experience, you're recruiting a Horrible History. It's that or Famalam, right? I know there's a bit of sketch coming back in, and there were a few commissions, but that's not going to be. That's all being made. But on telly right now, there's no. Is there sketch?
Yeah,
there was the Emily Attack show a couple of years ago. So a lot of it is that too. Like that's where you're working. Anyway, so and then they were like, "Well, do you like history?" Yeah, I love history. I love writing, and so the book is a history book for kids. So right, but I think it's all comedy. It's all funny.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
but then it's all funny. But then there's lots of different types and styles. So do you often find that you keep yourself interested by, and now you're doing this book, then you're doing something else, and like is that a way to keep yourself interested, or would you be kind of? Is it just a case of like this got offered and so I've done this and this got offered?
Bit of everything. Okay, so I think of myself as very fortunate because. Am I a student of comedy? When I started doing stand-up, I just thought I'd be a stand-up. And then it was made very clear to me, just by the ether, that, you this is not, you're going to have to do more stuff. And people were always like, do you have a script? Do you have a script? And I was like, well, no, I don't. Yeah. And then I thought, I better write a script. But then a lot of people just want to write scripts. I studied it. Do you know what I mean? I read every book I could about script writing. I've done a couple of script writing courses and stuff like that. And I think the reason why I'm lucky is, just to have the time, the aptitude, the kind of. Yeah. I now help people write scripts, and it's quite clear they don't study it, and then and it's kind of like just to have that motivation. I think, and that respect for it. Like I'm a comedy fan. I'm not just like, oh, I want to be huge. No, like I love this. I love comedy. So it was like so I became a student of it, and so that's how I got into script writing. And then for the radio stuff, script writing went into radio, and then Radio 4 were very good to me early in my career. I think because there's not a lot of people are like falling over themselves to get Radio 4. Oh no, I think back in the day, people weren't falling over themselves to get Radio 4. They are now because telly isn't doing so well. But and when I say people weren't falling over themselves, I mean kind of people who wouldn't be seen as traditional Radio 4 kind of clientele. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I guess
they don't sound like Glenn Wool. Basically, Glenn Wool is the voice of Radio 4 in my head. I know he hasn't been on Radio 4 that much, but you just see him and you go, I think Radio 4 just has spawned a child. There's kind of like, but that kind of idea of like,
but I don't talk about this much because I don't think it's wholly relevant, and I don't like to talk about it as well because I think that it's like you could take up space.
I said Glenn Wool. I meant Glenn Moore, an absolute tool. Glenn Wool is not the voice of Radio 4.
And the funny thing is, I heard Glenn Moore, and then I was like, okay. Anyway,
sorry.
Anyway, Glenn, we can edit that. Glenn Moore, who's hilarious, but it's more like I get it. Like a lot of black creatives in those spaces are still doing work about identity, right? And it's like no, I'll write about anything. Do you know what I mean? And you do feel like a bit of a unicorn, but a lot of the time it's because you're encouraged to write about identity as well and stuff. And by the way, this isn't to say it's wrong to do that. It's just like you do feel like when you're there doing generic jokes about Trump or Boris and stuff, you do feel conscious that this is not generally the path that someone that looks like he tends to take.
Well, there is that, I think, in a lot of art forms, if there's been underrepresentation in that area, then what happens is, well-meaning or not, there's that sense of like, oh, you're this underrepresented, person type, whatever. Could you write about this thing that obviously is your life experience, whereas might not necessarily be your life experience, but it's just expected in some way.
Or your life experience is held up as representative of lots of other people, which is not true. So I've always resisted that because I've always tried. I think whenever you create something, it's fine as long as it's honest. And it would be dishonest, especially being like having like I've got a bit of a very very mixed identity of class and race in my background, so I don't like being anyone's spokesperson. But I do like to be honest, and if people hear my truth and think, oh, I can relate to that, then that's good. But I don't like to like lead with it and be like, oh, and I'm the leader of the middle class black people. Like I definitely am not. Clive Myrie is our leader.
But at the same time, it's you know, like I think that it's healthy to kind of have that view, and also like I think it comes from like we met initially when we first met. We were both working at Camden Council. We didn't meet.
Did I meet you at Camden? Though? I think you always were there.
I was one or two. There are other people. So when I was at Camden Council, it was like, oh, so do you know Athena? She does comedy. And there was just, you know, like, and I can't remember what you were doing, but I was in the recycling department. But there's that sense, I think, of feeling lucky of doing it because, like, you know, when you're, you know, I mean, it was nice working Camden Council, loads of really funny, lovely, you know, people, but it's not what I wanted to do. It's not what you wanted to do. And it always feels like very lucky to have gotten out of that because it's like a lot of people don't necessarily, you know, so like the studiness that you talk about, like I can really recognize that as almost like it's not like the work ethic that comes from, oh, I've got to work in order to make sure that I'm doing something else, because it's like you need some, you know, propulsion energy to get you out of whatever it is, Camden Council or whatever it is that you're doing, you know. And it also takes risk, so you kind of know that you're a bit lucky as well. Like, you know that it doesn't happen for everyone. Like, I'm sure, like when I was every job I've been, there have been funnier people than me that have wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And those people just, you know, or, you know, there have been funnier comedians that we both know, could name loads of funny comedians that just didn't make it because whatever happened in their life, and you know, it didn't go kind of like didn't quite go right for them.
There's so much luck. Like if I'd had my daughter in 2018, if I'd had her 4 years earlier, I wouldn't be here today. Like I had her whilst at the point I had her, I was kind of, this is my job now, this is my life. So I didn't have to do drives all around the country. I could kind of I'd done my 4 or 5 years on the road, which a lot of people are like, just 4 or 5 years, but it is, you can make a name for yourself, you know. And so
that's still 4 or 5 years. It's just
that's 3 cars I went through.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Because my cars were really shit. So these are like
you've only been through 3 cars.
Listen, I have so many stories about just bonnets just flying off a car, or my, you know, like just insane stories. But so it happened, and it's like, oh well, you know, I'm a comedian, you know, I do gigs, I worked, you type my name into Google, shit comes up. And so it meant that I could kind of take a step back, do all that looking after them. I
love the idea that you call motherhood taking a step back, but motherhood and having a career. But you say, you know, but there is, it's funny because you say luck, and there is an element of luck in the timing of things sometimes that it's not in your control, not out of anybody else's, you know, you don't have any sense of it. But I think if you've come from a background where you've not had the career up at the comedy career, you know, oh fuck, so much of this is timing, so much of this is the right, is massive, you know. But also turning your hand at everything, doing some book writing and going, right, I've got a kid now, but so it means I can't drive up and down the country to do gigs, but what else can I do? Oh, I could write these sketches, or I could write, you know, a book on, you know. Is there that element of the pragmatic of what you could do at the same time? And
that's interesting. Yes and no. Yes, I think when I started writing, I very much had it in my mind that this is probably something I'd have to get quite good at in order for my comedy life to be sustainable. Especially like wanting to be a very present parent. But it's so weird. I've always just, we're sat here and we're going, oh, planning and this. I always just have also gone with the flow. I'm probably right for 2 reasons. The first reason is after my first Edinburgh, I met a producer, a really safe guy from Scotland. He was like, oh, you're really funny. I've got a sketch on Radio 4. I'd love for you to write for it. And I sent him 2 sketches, right? And I'd written before, but these were my first post training sketches, like so post reading everything, studying, writing, and they got like made and broadcast. So I'm listening to the radio, I'm like, fucking hell, there were actors reading out my words, right?
Yeah.
So and then he got season 2. So I was like, you know, I peppered this guy with fucking sketches. You know what I mean? I was like, and he was like, yeah, listen, you're getting so much in the show this time. You're going to be a lead writer because you're literally, it's like, you know, whatever. So that was the thing that was like, I think I'm not even saying that people saw that credit getting lots of work. What that done was sort out my ego. So it was like, I deserve to be here. I can do it. I can take up the space. So that was the first thing. Second thing was I got something called the Felix Dexter bursary, which is like a BBC bursary. And if you write a script and they like it, they say come in for 6 months, and we'll pay you. And you know, like you sit around really. I mean, like the actual bursary was like maybe not like what I thought it would be, even though it was fantastic. But when I got it, right, they were like, they put out a press release. Athena Kugblenu was awarded the Felix Dexter bursary, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Athena's a writer, and then people ask, "Did you write and stuff?" And it really amplified that part of my work, and that's it. and I've been thankfully, touch wood, been asked to write ever since. Yeah. No one's made my shit, but I've been making other people's stuff, which is fine.
But it's that kind of thing of the two quotes that come into my head is the Steve Martin quote. I'm very lucky that perseverance is a great substitute for talent, which is something I always remember. Of just like, well, I've got very little talent, but if I just keep persevering,
keep going.
You know, 99% of success is turning up, and you're kind of like peppering him, that initial producer, with sketch after sketch after sketch, and led into that situation.
Yeah, massively.
I'm curious about the bursary and what was not like it, like you thought it was going to be.
Oh, it's just sort of like, I guess I wrote this pilot, and to this day, it's the best script I've ever written. I love it. It's a bit, bizarrely enough, based on Camden Council. It's based on Parks and Rec. Oh, wow. But based in Camden, right? So you can imagine, right?
Oh, come on, that would be great.
It would be so dope. And sadly, it's just, you know, energy is a big thing, so that it's energy is like this now. But it was a great spec script for me, and it got me lots of work. I think it was more like, when I say disappointment, it was more, COVID. I got it during COVID, first of all. So it was supposed to end in a read-through, right? Yeah. So people will know this if they're in the industry. If they don't know, when you have a good pilot or a pilot people like, they will put lots of industry people in a room and they will have actors read out your script, and they'll, you know, it just brings it to life. Yeah. And it didn't, and obviously I couldn't get that read-through because by that point we were in lockdown, and they were like, well, do you want to do it over Zoom? And like, there were loads of characters, and I was like, it doesn't really work that way. And it sort of just fizzled out that way. So lockdown was a big thing.
Yeah.
That was what preempted me to quit my day job, because they said you've got to come in every day, and I couldn't do my day job. So at that point I would say I had 2 jobs. I was working as a comic at my old job, but I very much value financial security, so I was like, I will just do this. But that becomes unsustainable when you've got a child, right?
I love the way you say I very much value financial security as if like, unlike most people.
but you'd be surprised.
It's tough. Some people don't have to value.
It was like, I'm not giving up. I'm not making my life risky for comedy, right?
Yeah.
But they said
yes. Or prejudicing your kind of like, you know, your daughter's life.
Right, all that jazz. But the bursary was like money. It wasn't that good money. Do you know what I mean? And so having to sort of live with like this really kind of modest income, and you know, and you're kind of prevented from doing other things because you've got to be on site for quite a long time. Even though I could, you know, I'd have a day writing I was in horrible histories at that point, so I could have a day doing that, and I could do a day doing News Jack. But generally speaking, so the financial constraints for it were quite tough.
Yeah.
And not getting that read for at the end was quite tough, I think, because But there's that reality check, like most stuff doesn't get made, right? Yeah. So when you get selected to do something like that, and it's quite prestigious, you do think, oh my god, this is one step closer to like lights, camera, action, and it wasn't actually that at all, and that's fine. But there was a moment when I had to learn that, and I think learning that was like, okay, so that's not going to happen. But what am I getting out of this? And what I was getting out of it was like, it was a bit like when you go brownies and you get the writer badge. Like, do you watch Hey Dougie? Yeah, you've got your screenwriting badge. So it was like, okay, I can sew this badge on now. And now I feel really happy calling myself like a scripted telly writer. Scripted comedy
because
writer,
you
whatever.
are, and it's out there. And
the
like
badge
is there.
Yeah, I've done it, and I've written some garbage. You know what I mean? I've had some notes on my scripts. You know, I've written some absolute dog shit over the years, but that's a part of the learning. And
that is part of the learning. Like, part of the learning is you have to make mistakes, right? You have to write good stuff. You have to write terrible stuff. It's like, but that's part of it. And also, like, you know, and I always think that's the luxury of being able to have that part of it. Like, there was a time when I remember, like when I first started, Mitchell and Webb were doing a sketch show at the same time as us, and we got the same amount of reviews as them, but by the end of their kind of run, they were writers at the BBC, and but they were writers for like 10 years and nobody had really heard of them, and they wrote on a load of terrible stuff, but getting the opportunity to write terrible stuff can sometimes be just that's all you need, really. It's money coming in, it's like, and you just keep writing. And by the sounds of it, one of the things you said there was that it's learning that the job isn't about the successes, the job is about the trying. The job is going kind of like, it's not necessarily, the successes are brilliant, but actually the day-to-day can be a lot more prosaic, a lot more kind of like, oh, okay, so the read-through didn't happen, but I've got this stuff out of it, and there are other things that are really positive.
I think you have to be really pragmatic and realistic and eternally optimistic, even if you're a pessimist. Like, you've got to be.
It's so hard.
I did something else called the people don't remember this, but the BBC used to do this thing called the writers' room, right? So they used to get, if for aspiring sitcom writing for all over the country would send their scripts into the BBC, and they'd pick out the 12 best scripts.
I remember this.
You remember this? Yeah, right. Fucking that they used to get thousands of scripts, right? It was like it's insane they ever did it. I think they do it anymore. So I got into prior to the bursary, I got into that. Okay. Anyway, I'm just going somewhere, and I bumped into someone literally last week who was in the writers' room with me. All right, and we were talking. She was like, "How did that go for you?" And I said, "You know what? Actually went alright." And she was like, "Oh yeah, but not much happened for me." And I was like, "Do you know something? Like, it wasn't like you do the writers' room and then it's like you get like a golden ticket. It's kind of like it's what I said before. Like, it's your ego. Like, someone took what you did and they compared it to 3,500 other scripts, and they said, we want to help you. That's just being picked. It's like it's a bit like the claw from like Toy Story. But the only thing is you just get taken out and just put down. Nothing else happens. You literally have to work with that. There's nothing else.
But I think that's so valuable for people to hear as well, because the golden ticket is like an internal golden ticket to know that you can do it. It's just like somebody else is going, yes, you can do this, so then you can believe it, rather than just kind of like.
But it's also, be real, like episode of telly costs about $250,000 per episode, right? So they're not gonna make it, right? The reason they're gonna make it is for other reasons. No one's gonna find £10 million to give you because you're in the writers, you're in the BBC writers. But what you're going to do is do other stuff based off of that experience, and then maybe you'll get that show or whatever. But we had a good chat, but it made me think that maybe I'm lucky that I came into scripted work as a comedian, because I know disappointment. Do you know what I mean? my expectations are really appropriate.
But I think that's in the whole career. I think everyone's I've heard BAFTA winning people like talk about that, about the disappointments is part of the game. Learning to fail and keep getting up is part of the game, and it's never said, but it's learning to go. But
also I understand that. What is failure really?
Exactly. What
is failure? So I've started to think this thing where it's like, if you make stuff, you've made it. If you make stuff, you've made it. Like, literally, whatever you do, if you're making it. And then there is a caveat, like, it has to be good. Don't make
well, not at the beginning, maybe, but
but I mean, like, let's talk about, like, for that level where it's your job, right? And it's like you want to do it for a living and file a tax return every January, and shit yourself. Where we're going to tax it.
If you got a tax return, that's making it.
Yeah, but seriously, like, if you've got receipts, if you've got pictures on your phone of petrol receipts and stuff, mileage. So if you make stuff, you've made it. So when you call yourself a failure, but this is your job, or whether the tide is out, it doesn't matter. Like, be very careful with that word failure, because it's kind of like it implies that you work in a kind of meritocracy, or that you've got a 9-to-5 job where you get paid at the end of the month. We don't work in that environment. So I think the way we define failure has to be very honest about our chances of doing what it is we want to do, and what needs to fall in place for the things to happen. So I things haven't happened that I would like to happen, but I don't like to use that word failure if I'm proud of what I've created. You know what I'm saying? So and then it becomes a question of study, because if you study your craft, then you can be proud of what you've created because you know it's good. You know.
Because you've seen others, you know it.
You know it. You can. And I think being able to look at your work, whether it's stand-up or a scripted piece or whatever, and being able to assess it subjectively. That's the word. Is it objectively? Yeah, assess it subjectively. Then I think that is a good thing to do, because then you can decide whether you're a failure. If you look at your work, this is shit, you failed. But if you look at your work and you love it, then somebody else failed because they didn't notice it, and I think that's a different perspective.
And a really, I think, supportive, and you know, you only get to know that when you've been doing it a bit as well. It's like you don't know that right at the top. You know, and it's interesting, like coming back to the gig as well, like on stage, like success and failure is so immediate. Like you kind of know immediately. And like, is there something about stand-up that draws you back to the immediacy of, like, because when you're writing, you write something, you send it off, the process is so long. Like, what brings you back to to doing live
both
work?
That and money. We are recording this during International Women's Month. I am caning it in Harry. I might lie. But no, that and money is, I think, why, if you can do stand-up, right, and you know you're good at it, why would you stop? You'd never stop, man. Even if I ever get to the point where I'm like, I could hire a venue and sell just like 200 tickets and just fuck about, I would do it. Why would you not? It's just like, you do it.
Absolutely.
But it's a superpower, and it takes a long time. I think it takes a long time to go to stand up, and I think that you invest so much in it, then it's like I would always come back. And also, my brain is still like, I've literally just been doing loads of new material this month, and it's just like, man, I'm so happy that I'm getting this off my chest. Like, it's so, I love an observation, and I love making that observation in front of people, and I'm not very good at making on content, so it's gotta be in front of people, because I'm not good at, I'm trying to get better with that, obviously, but like, if I'm gonna get it out there, it's gonna be on a stage at this point in time.
And today, what was the bits that you're working on? What are the newer bits?
So the giving blood bit. You good? I know I'm good because I give blood. Who gives blood? You give blood. You give. Okay, you're boring. You're boring. You're boring back there. I'm boring. No, if you give blood, you're boring. You know we're boring because we get told we're boring. We've got to fill in a form before we give blood. Right? And that form is like the clinical version of have you ever? You know that form, innit? You have to ask the questions. Some of them are quite personal, not all of them. Some of the questions are things like, have you got a tattoo? Right? If you've got a tattoo and you got one recently, can't give blood. Now, I like pictures, cannot stand pain. So, not going to get any pictures on me. No. They ask you other questions too, like, have you been anywhere nice on holiday? If you've been somewhere too nice, you'll get bitten by an insect. That insect might have a disease, and you might pass that disease on to someone in your blood. That's right here. Insects, they were our first line of defense against colonizers. It's true. Do you not listen during Black History Month? This happened. Europeans, went to all these hot countries, got bitten by nasty things, got the shits, went back home, invented Imodium, and then we know how the story goes. It was a terrible thing. But those insects were our first line of defense. Nowadays, if you go to a nice place, you can't give blood. The last time I gave blood, the nurse was like, where have you been recently? I said, Wales. They were like, that's fine. You can't. They ask you about your drug use. Do you take any hard drugs? And I was like, well, I had a cold a little while ago, and I took 5 paracetamol in a 24-hour period. And the packet said you should take 4, and then I said that's fine. I said that's fine. They ask you loads of questions. They ask you another question too about whether you. You know, they ask you, do you like it up the jacksie? Do you take it? Yeah, you can't. They ask you that question. You got to. Have you recently had anal sex? They ask you. For a long time, this was a very, very discriminatory rule, right? They wouldn't let people who enjoyed or just had it, because sometimes it's just, oh, okay. Do you know what I mean? If you've had all forms of it, if you've had it, you couldn't give blood. They've changed the rule now. You can give blood if you like it up the bum, but on condition that you know the person. We've just met tonight, Alessandro. I've got an appointment next week, so let's not ruin it. So yeah, it's just blood. Anyway, so this is what you got. You got to fill this form. You got this form, and it's all sorts of questions. And you look at the question, you go, no. How very dare you? No. And the nurse takes the form, looks at all of your answers, looks at how miserable you're living your life, and says, oh my God. You're wasting it. You're wasting it. Why don't you just go through there and give your blood to someone who wants to live? They look at you with disgust, don't they? You chickpea-riddled, quinoa-eating, magnolia house-walled, missionary with your socks on in the dark. Pathetic. Go, look, put your blood directly into Sharon right now. She's bent over the table. She's dying for some bum sex. She's anemic. It's wasted on you. Give it to her. So embarrassing. They don't have to do that. Even your blood type is embarrassing. It's the blood type and advice. Be positive. You make me sick. They don't have to do that. What's embarrassing for me is I go to the same centre. There's a blood centre, donor centre on Oxford Circus. So I go to that place because you always get appointments there. Because I go there all the time, it's the same staff, innit? So I turn up and I go and it'll be like, oh, I'll be like, all right, Dave, because I'm friendly. All right, Dave. And Dave goes, all right, Athena. And I'm going, yeah, good. I'm good, Dave. And Dave will go, still no anal. Still no anal. Still no anal. Many have tried.
So one of the things I loved about the routine is like how it breaks down all of those things and goes into each thing. Like there's a lovely, clear logic to it, and it progresses as well. Yeah,
but it's literally, if I don't know if you've given blood, but that's how it is. And I couldn't give blood for ages because I had travelled. I'd gone to Ghana a couple of years ago, and that prevented me. You can't give blood if you had a baby. And then I went to Ghana, then I went to Antigua, and it was like, we don't want your blood. And it's like, okay, well, Antigua was worth it. I can't lie, Antigua was worth it. So that just came out. That was just observations, and it's and I like talking about, and it is true. Like they ask you if you've had anal sex, and is it someone you've known for more than 3 months? They specify it, Barry. They
3 months.
Say 3 months.
You just have to look at the calendar. Well, we met ours 2.5 months. Is that a thing?
And it's all self-reported, by the way. Like there's no way to kind of know. And most people would, I guess, be honest. So,
I mean, it is just a really bizarre. I suppose one of the things that I really like about it is that it's both banal and intimate.
Right,
it's somebody that's just doing their job, but they're asking you the most intimate questions that you wouldn't really ask on a date. Yeah. On a 5th date, you're barely asking it.
And from recollection, I think they do specify are you a man that has sex with other men? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So they really use that clinical. They use really beautifully clinical language to ask these questions. So I like an observation, and if I love the observation, then I've got to talk about it. So I really enjoyed the observation that people who give blood are just boring people by necessity.
Yeah.
And what was the other bit? The thing about I'm obsessed with not obsessed, but certain things just annoy me when it comes to like people's perceptions about sort of race. And the one thing I hate is the one drop rule. I'm not an excitable person. This is my problem. I don't get excited easy. I'm pretty level-headed, but I have done research, and I know who the most excited person is on the planet. Do you want to know? Yeah. The most excited person on the planet is this person. It's a white person who finds out they've got a black person in their ancestry. You thought I was going to say attic, didn't you? Not not attic. In there. Oh, they love it. You know, you get your results back from those tests. It's like, oh my God, you can't call me Karen no more. Yes, we can. I'm gonna round up with a little story about a friend of mine who I can never tell the story on a bigger stage because she will recognise herself. But I have this friend, and I meet her like really regularly, so it's like once a year. It's 2025. That's enough, right? And she's white. Not bragging. It's part of the story. You have to know that this person is white. And we meet up and we always get coffee. And we always get strong coffees because we cannot stand each other, okay? But we are both in our early 40s, okay? And that is too old to be making new friends, okay? I'm not making new friends as a 43-year-old person, okay? My daughter started school you gasped, and that was right to gasp. You were fucking right to gasp, and you lot should be ashamed of yourselves. What the fucking hell? You need to go to Specsavers right now, honestly. 43 so my daughter started school a couple of years ago. I was like, I'm so excited. I'm going to meet people in the playground and we'll become friends. Okay, we'll become friends. You don't meet friends in the playground, you meet rivals. Okay, and do you know how psychopathic you look as a 43-year-old walking around other 40-year-old people trying to be friends with them? Will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? I've got a chest freezer in my garden. I'm going to cut you up and put you in it. That's how you look like when you try and like when you were like a child. When you're 18 and you go to university or something, you meet friends really easily. You bump into someone and 6 hours later they're holding your hair out the toilet whilst you're throwing up and you're just bonding. Friends for life. Or like, I had this friend, right? And after 2 weeks of knowing him, I woke up in his living room after a great night out. Nothing threatening. It wasn't anything like that. It was just we were friends. Woke up in his living room. I'd known him for 2 weeks. That was fine. If I wake up one morning and Trisha from the school run is in my living room, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing in my living room? Do you know what I mean? Then I get my chainsaw, chop her up. Anyway, so can't make new friends. Got to hang out with this girl, and she was like, "What's new with you, Athena?" I said, "Nothing's new with me." I said, "What's new with you?" She said, "Well, actually, something amazing has happened to me. I did a DNA test at one of those websites, you know, where you send your swabs. You know, you put a swab in your mouth and you send it to the internet. People, stop sending your DNA to the internet. Have you seen who owns the internet? They are taking those swabs and they're using them at crime scenes. It's convenient, isn't it?" She said that the results came back and she found out that her great ancestor is of black African descent. She said, "Do you know what this means?" I said, "No." She says, I can finally identify. Like, I know the candy dance, Athena. I know why. My straighteners have to go up to 8. I know why. She's like, I can finally identify as. And as she said as, I looked at her like this. And as I looked at her, she said, I can identify as someone who knows a bit more about where they come from. She wasn't going to say that, was she? She was going to say, I can identify as a black person, and she didn't. And people, she didn't do that because of my face. My face is educational. One look and I can erase fucking centuries of lies about the one-drop rule. Centuries are all gone. Black women's faces are educational, man. If we look moody at you, if we look at you like this, you said something very stupid. Yeah, and that's why Kemi Badenoch doesn't have any mirrors in her house.
Even black people fall for this shit. So like when Drake had his child, they'll be like, "Oh my God, he's gonna have an afro," or like that came out a lot with Meghan and Harry. You know, that child is mixed. For real, I'm not pure. It's like there's no mixed race child, but that's not a black child, man. That's not let's draw a line. Let's please, and not in a bad way, but like just the way people would just talk. There were fucking memes of these little babies with ginger afros and all this stuff, and I was just like, look at why are we speaking in this way? Like it just like it's not only is it a completely inaccurate way, like biologically, to talk about humans, like it denies the complete construct of black as a race. We are not a biological race. We are a conceptual race. Like the continent of Africa is more genetic diversity than than anywhere. So like, if I need a kidney, I'm coming to you, Barry.
Yeah.
I'm more likely to be matched with you than like someone from Kenya, for example. Kenya is closer. The East African continent has closer genetic ties to the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that bit, and there is somebody in my life who is white and who was very excited to have a black ancestor in her fucking.
The irony being is that most people have more Neanderthal than them.
Right. Well, there you go. You know, so we should all be scratching our bums and doing grunting.
But does that also sometimes when a thing comes? So there's a bit of absurdity in a moment like that.
Yeah.
But is there also part of you wanting to talk about an issue that is kind of also emotionally getting under your skin? Of just like, let's kind of like, or is it just purely the absurdity?
I don't think we talk about race on a complex enough term. It's more like a kind of like, if no one else is going to break this shit down, I'll do it. Yeah. I think we tend to be encouraged to have very entry level conversations to difficult subjects, and understandably so. Because we want to sell stuff and people don't want to get scared. But actually, I could do a routine about someone touching my hair, Barry, but it's been about 12 years since someone touched my hair. Like, it's just, people have, somebody will do it. Like, I'm not saying people have completely stopped, but generally speaking, and so when I talk about these things, I'm more interested in talking about the things people don't even realize, because people don't really think about, where does blackness stop? I'm mixed race, I'm black. Right? So where does it stop? What if my partner wasn't black?
Where's
what
that line?
And should there be a line? And the fact there is a line there is really offensive, right? Like what? My existence.
And who's deciding that line?
Right. Where does it come from? And it's all because we don't have these quite sophisticated conversations, we go around in circles when it comes to like progress. I personally think because they're sophisticated and very challenging, and a lot of us are in mixed race relationships, and we are thinking about our identity, and some people's identity become their personality types. So what does that mean now when you break down racial identity as a complete invention? It can't be a fucking personality, can it? So it's not
however
real.
much you try, however much some people try.
We can try. So it's more, going back to your question, it's more out of the conversations I have on stage about some subjects. I prefer to have slightly more interesting ones to me than ones that I don't think are interesting.
Yeah, they're not as superficial. So you're not interested in kind of what is essentially, are we talking about the ginger afro, or we're actually talking about what we're talking about? How little have you come to terms with kind of white supremacy and what it's done to black people? If you are looking at this child and this kid's got a black grandma, this kid's gonna come out eating chicken, and it's like, what are you talking about? This is so weird. Like this is literally like this is a racist white person would have said that 200 years ago, because you're quote unquote you'd have had that drop and you would no longer be white. This idea that there is a quote unquote pure race that can then be kind of tainted by something, like why would you celebrate that idea? I think that's very odd. And but right for parodying, right for kind of puncturing.
So, of course. Just and the absurdity is the good word. But we sometimes, like, we go for, in the real world, we find something funny, but we don't realise that what we're actually doing is just reinforcing something that's quite poisonous. Sometimes in like lots, we've all done it. We've all laughed when someone's fallen over but then they've broken their hip. Right? It's not, and that's the kind of comedy equivalent of that. Like it's really funny, but actually it's not. It's quite insidious. But ultimately it's just a dumb joke about some silliness.
But that's and that's both, and it could be both. I'm curious, because we're coming to the end of the time we've got. But what if you had to think of a moment in the gig tonight that would have been, the two questions, is the most useful moment for you, as in the bit that you might have tried something new, or and the bit that you enjoyed the most?
I liked going on stage having just thought about what I was going to do for the first couple of minutes. I always enjoy that. That's always good fun for me.
So kind of like going, I can talk about this Italian thing and have
that's fun. Although in hindsight I probably wouldn't have done that.
In hindsight you would have stuck to script.
I would have just stuck to script and
done the work you wanted to do. But man, that'll be written on my tombstone.
In hindsight I would have done but I enjoyed that. And I like do you know there's a bit in the blood bit I do where I'm like, your Black History, like white people went over, got bitten, got the shits, had to come home. I've done that before, but I've used the word trots.
Oh yeah.
And trots is funnier.
Yeah.
And I confirmed that tonight. I was like, got the trots. People fucking love that. It's just a funnier turn of phrase.
Yeah.
So that was useful.
That's a direct learning. Yeah.
That was kind of useful.
I always
got the trots.
love those moments. Just like, okay, and that's decided now. Because it feels right. Your gut was with it.
Got the trot. And I've my son had the trots recently, and that's where I got the idea to use the word trots. Yeah. And just fucking runny diarrhea. Just fucking.
I wonder where it comes from. Trots.
Oh well. Also, have you heard of? I think they call it runner's trot. Where I don't know if you run, but I used to run, and when you run a lot, sometimes you kind of think I need a shit, and they call it runner's trot. And it's Paul Radcliffe done it famously, right? And I doesn't happen a lot. But so that's where I associate the word trots with. But getting the trots is having it. But there's something funny on stage going, yeah, man, these colonizers, man, went over to these countries, got the trots. Yeah. And then emojium is a good word too. Basically, diarrhea is just funny. Diarrhea doesn't stop being funny.
It also has a lot of other funny words associated with it. Emojium is a great line.
Emojium is such a good brand.
It's a tasty,
It's like Rennie.
Yeah.
It's Gaviscon. Gaviscon's another strong one.
Yeah, but there's strong words. Like, there are certain words that get lost.
But they're evocative. And I really enjoy talking. Any opportunity I get, people know I talk about colonialism. So it's just like, let's fucking wedge it in. Yeah. But I enjoy linking, being a writer, all writers do this, I enjoy linking two things that shouldn't go together. Yeah. So talking about, have you been on holiday? And then, oh yeah, by the way, they did that 300 years ago and they got the trots. And it's the same kind of concept, right?
Yeah.
So half the time it's not even intellectual, I'm just enjoying mashing two things together.
Yeah. Well, that's comedy juxtaposition, isn't it? It's like the tension between two things that should not be next to each other.
And it's easy. It's such an. I mean, I don't want to reveal our secrets, but it is just a shortcut to a laugh at the end of the day. Yeah. People do try to over elaborate on my intellectualism. Really, I'm just like, it's just fucking funny, mate. I'm not trying to change the world. Yeah. But I come at it from this angle because I probably am a bit too educated. If I can't lie. Educated.
But it's, again, that's such a kind of like working class, or kind of like not necessarily working class, but like putting the work in. Oh, I'm too educated. Nah. But listen, I could talk to you for way longer, but you've got...
I know, I'm so sorry I can't stay. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Guys, I've been Athena, Kugblenu. You've been fantastic. Thank you. Good night.
That was great, but you need therapy.